Hey, a pleasant good evening to you, Mr. Steve Alvarez.
Pleasant evening to you, my good man. What's up?
Hey, always good to hear your voice, of course. And for folks who know that Steve is a social and political commentator here in Trinidad and Tobago, and he's always, adding his 2 cents to many of the major issues. And I want to thank you for taking time out to linking with us. Something quite interesting, of course, the finance minister, Com Imbert, says one of this government's major focuses is empowering every citizen to participate meaningfully in the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. And to achieve this, the minister said everyone should have equitable access to the formal financial sector regardless of their circumstances or background. And he made the comments, of course, yesterday at a workshop event by the Trinidad and Tobago International Financial Center at the waterfront yesterday. The minister further explained the rationale for financial inclusion. He said apart from empowering citizens who are left out of the formal financial sector, it encourages, of course, entrepreneurship in underserved groups such as residents of rural areas, women, and small and micro businesses. I mean, when you listen to this, Mr. Alvarez, there has to be some sense of skepticism as to, you're talking about equity, social economic equity. And this is something that you really don't hear, especially from a PNM government. It has always been along the dividing lines of the elite, those who can make it, and those who simply just cannot. What do you make of this?
Well, it's always good to hear people talk about things like equity and plan for the younger people and entrepreneurship and stuff like that. But you must have an overall vision. For example, the first question that anyone would ask is, okay, what is the direction that Trinidad is going in? Are we looking at the oil industry? Are we looking at the energy industry? Are we looking at tourism? Are we looking at agriculture? There must be an overall plan. So if you have an overall plan, let's say we are going to revamp tourism. So then you can say, hey, you can invest in tourism, you can invest in transportation, you can invest in infrastructure development, you can invest in be a tour guide and so on, but at least you have a sense of direction. If you are saying, no, listen, we are going along the energy sector, we have a sense of direction. At this time, the whole world is looking now at IT and AI and all those technological areas. We can say that's the direction we're going on. But to just come out and say we want equity and we want people to have access to finance, to do what? To open a tire shop, to sell pillar on the side of the road. What is the direction for the nation, for the young people, for the people that are graduating from colleges and so on? What direction are you steering them in? And that's where the problem is. Nobody knows. There's no overall plan. It's just talk that sounds good. So you say, for example, MyLat, MyPath, and the people, they have all these fantastic programs. But when you ask yourself, so what are we looking at? We want to have more plumbers, we want to have more electricians, we want to have more construction people. For what? For the construction industry, for housing? We need to have an overall vision for Trinidad and Tobago, and that's
Mr. Alvarez, but the issue of inclusion, and this is what stands out to me the most, the fact of inclusion into what? The good old boys club? Because you have people who may, let's say a relative passed away and left you with some property, you have a house, you've added on, you're a public servant, trying to supplement your income, you've added on one space to the house, another space, and you're renting it out and what have you. But when you talk about inclusion, does that mean that the average person is going to have the privilege and benefit of those who have been writing the economic books for all this time? Does that mean that I can walk in the bank and be qualified for a moratorium, which is basically $5 million US for the next 60 months? I pay no interest, and I just, if I don't do anything with it, I just bring it back. Or, and these are the things when you talk about inclusion, there are people who are handpicked. Because you and I simply can't just go and get the benefits of putting up apartments on Picton Street, circumventing the financial institutions, making way in town and country and getting approved overnight, having our documents authorized, in such a manner that it can cause whiplash. I mean, we put it in on Monday and by Thursday they're telling us it's there. We don't experience that thing on a daily basis, so who is being included into this new thing? What inclusion?
Well, inclusion is a nice word. It's a nice sounding word. If you talk about inclusion, people start to say, well, there's no discrimination. We're not targeting one sector of the society. We're targeting the entire country and so on. So it sounds nice, but you have to have a plan, and you have to, for example, exactly what you just said. When you talk about what is the next step. So you remember we're talking to ordinary citizens in a country. We are talking about people in the villages and towns, and we want to tell them this is what you do tomorrow, and for them it must be clear. Do I go to this institution or to this government office? Is there a form for me to fill out? What is the criteria for me to feel included? And those things you don't get from that. But it sounds good and it makes headlines and so on. But if you had a plan, then everyone would know. Hey, one of the fantastic things about this country is that once something hits the road, everybody gets, the knowledge comes around really quickly. People know exactly what's happening. So somebody would say to you, hey, guess what? You have to go to the Ministry of so-and-so. There's a form, you fill it out, apply for how much money you want, and if you apply in this area, you're going to have approvals and so on. That is the thing that people would say, they know, but nobody knows.
Yeah, and he goes on to say, and this is the National Financial Inclusion Strategy is intended to provide a framework to empower citizens, particularly the unbanked, with the tools and resources they need to be financially resilient. But you just told us to bring every old dollar, everything that we have, whether it's in the mattress, in the cupboard, and bring it out. And how did we benefit from that? As a matter of fact, we don't even know how much money was actually changed. There was a lack of transparency into all of that. Now you're telling us that we're going to get into something that we're going to be a part of that is going to give us the tools and resources based on a strategy that is going to include us into this whole economic component. I mean, how real again is that?
Well, as I said, we're quickly approaching an election period, and there would be people doing research and so on. And one of the things that you'd find out is that our young people feel very, hopeless. There's absolutely nothing that they can look for. There's a lot of despair. That is why you have to now have new ideas that brings hope to a nation, that makes people just think about a future where they can be hopeful. And that is something that kind of scares people because, it scares the politicians who have been going with the same old for the last 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
And now they're thinking, well, wait, now people are looking in a different direction. So now you go out, you do some research, and you come up with words like inclusiveness and sharing the words among everyone and so on. But there's no plan.
No plan.
What you just said is you hit the nail on the head. There's absolutely no plan. Nobody can say, look, tomorrow this is what I do.
Yeah.
Okay?
So what we're faced with is basically just shallow, empty rhetoric, and I think believing that that's going to be enough to fill the minds and the hearts and the vision of the people of a country. Now, that in itself does not add up, and I'm sure we're going to pay a price for that sometime, if not in the near future, somewhere along the way.
We're paying the price already.
Yeah. I want to thank you so much again. Our time is up, but I want to thank you so much for taking time out. I know you were on the tennis courts, of course, practicing and getting yourself up to par again. Always a pleasure.
To keep fit.
Always a pleasure to hear from you. Thank you so much again.
Take care, Mikey. And good night, Trinidad and Tobago. Take care.